There are partnerships built on handshakes and trust. He was 72, a veteran entrepreneur from Silicon Valley who believed in people over paperwork. She was 34, an operations manager from Manila with credentials that looked flawless on paper. Together, they were supposed to build something revolutionary. Instead, she built a perfect system to steal nearly $500,000 right under his nose. I was standing in front of the whiteboard in our Manila office, sketching out the product roadmap for Q3, when Bella walked in with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," she said, setting one down beside my laptop. "You've been at it since 6 this morning." I glanced at the clock. It was almost noon. I hadn't even noticed. "Thanks, Bella. I get lost in this stuff." She smiled and leaned against the desk, looking at the diagrams I'd drawn. "That's why this is going to work. You see the vision. I make sure the trains run on time." That was our dynamic. I handled strategy, product development, investor relations. She managed operations, finances, vendor relationships, staffing. We complemented each other perfectly. Or so I thought. I'd come to the Philippines 18 months earlier with a specific goal. I wanted to build a tech startup that could compete globally but operate at Southeast Asian cost structures. I had the Silicon Valley experience, the network, the strategic mindset. What I needed was someone local who could execute flawlessly. I interviewed dozens of candidates. Bella stood out immediately. She had an MBA from a respected university in Manila. She'd worked for 3 multinational corporations in operations and finance roles. Her references were glowing. During the interview, she asked intelligent questions about scalability, cash flow management, and operational efficiency. "I'm not interested in just having a job," she told me during our second meeting. "I want to build something that matters, something I can be proud of." That sold me. I didn't just want an employee. I wanted a partner. We structured the company as a 50-50 partnership. I put in the initial capital. She put in sweat equity and operational expertise. We agreed that all major decisions would be joint, but day-to-day operations were her domain. I trusted her completely. The first 6 months were exhilarating. We hired a small team of developers, secured our first pilot customers, built out the product. Everything was moving fast, and Bella kept everything organized. She sent me detailed financial reports every week, expense breakdowns, cash flow projections, vendor contracts. Everything looked professional and tight. "You're incredible at this," I told her after reviewing one particularly detailed report. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "That's what partners are for," she said warmly. "You focus on the big picture. I'll handle the details." I never questioned her. Why would I? The numbers always added up. The business was growing. Our burn rate seemed reasonable for a startup. Looking back now, that was my fatal mistake. I delegated financial oversight completely. I never did spot checks, never asked to see original invoices, never verified vendor relationships. I treated her like a true partner, which meant trusting her completely. And she used that trust to rob me blind. But I didn't know that yet. For the first year, everything seemed perfect. We landed a major contract with a logistics company in Singapore. It was a breakthrough moment. Bella organized a team dinner to celebrate. "This is just the beginning," she said, raising her glass. "We're going to build something extraordinary together." I believed her. I believed in us. Around month 10, I started noticing small things. Nothing alarming, just little inconsistencies that didn't quite add up. Our cloud hosting costs seemed high. Bella explained that we'd upgraded our infrastructure to handle the Singapore contract. We'd hired 2 new developers I didn't remember approving. Bella said we'd discussed it in a meeting I must have forgotten. There was a payment to a consulting firm I didn't recognize. Bella said they'd done some specialized work on our compliance documentation. Each explanation made sense in isolation. And I was busy. I was traveling back to the US every few months to meet with potential investors. I was managing product development. I was handling customer relationships. I trusted Bella to manage everything else. By month 14, the small inconsistencies were becoming harder to ignore. I noticed that our monthly operating expenses had crept up significantly. When I asked Bella about it, she had detailed explanations. Office rent went up when we renewed the lease. Salaries increased because we gave the team raises. We invested in better equipment. These are all normal growth expenses. She showed me spreadsheets that backed up everything she was saying. I wanted to believe her, so I did. My son Alex called me around that time. He lived in San Francisco and worked in fintech. Dad, I've been thinking about your startup. Have you had an independent audit done? Why would I need that? Bella handles all the finances. That's exactly why you should have one. No offense, but you're trusting someone you've only known for a year with complete financial control. She's my partner, Alex, not just an employee. Partners steal too, Dad, especially when there's no oversight. I got defensive. I didn't build 3 successful companies by being naive about people. I know what I'm doing. He backed off, but I could hear the concern in his voice. Just think about it, okay? I didn't think about it. I was annoyed that he'd questioned my judgment. 2 weeks later, one of our vendors called me directly. Mr. Blackwood, I'm calling about the outstanding invoice from 3 months ago. We haven't received payment yet. I was confused. That should have been paid. Let me check with my operations manager. I went to Bella's office. She was on the phone but waved me in. When she hung up, I mentioned the vendor's call. Her face registered surprise. That's strange. I processed that payment myself. Let me pull up the records. She opened her laptop and showed me a payment confirmation. See? Paid in full on March 15th. The vendor says they never received it. Then there's probably a banking error. I'll follow up with them and with our bank. Don't worry about it. She seemed completely unfazed. I let it go. But 3 days later, another vendor called with the same issue. Then another. I went back to Bella. This is becoming a pattern. 3 vendors now saying they haven't been paid. She frowned, looking genuinely concerned. This is really unusual. I'm wondering if there's something wrong with our bank. Let me schedule a meeting with them. I want to be in that meeting. Of course. I'll set it up for tomorrow. The meeting never happened. Bella called me that evening. The bank found the issue. There was a technical problem with our payment processing system. All the payments went through, but the vendors weren't getting the confirmation notifications. Everything's resolved now. Are you sure? Positive. I have written confirmation from the bank. I'll forward it to you. She did forward something. An email that looked official. I didn't verify it because I still trusted her. I shouldn't have. Month 16 was when things started unraveling faster. I was reviewing our cash position because we were planning to raise a Series A round. The numbers didn't look right. We should have had about $200,000 in the bank based on our revenue and the capital I'd invested. According to Bella's reports, we had $75,000. I asked her about it. We had some unexpected expenses. I sent you the breakdown last month. Show me again. She pulled up a detailed spreadsheet. Legal fees, compliance costs, equipment upgrades, marketing expenses. It all looked legitimate, but something felt off. Bella, I need to see the actual invoices, not just the summary. For the first time, I saw hesitation in her eyes. Just for a second, then it was gone. Of course, I'll pull them together for you. Today. I'm slammed today. How about tomorrow morning? Fine. First thing. Tomorrow morning came, and Bella called in sick. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I went to the office anyway. I had keys and full access to everything, or so I thought. I went to the file cabinet where Bella kept hard copies of invoices and contracts. It was locked. I didn't have a key. I tried to access our cloud accounting system. My login didn't work. When had that changed? I tried our bank account. Same thing. Access denied. I called Bella. I can't access any of our financial systems. She coughed weakly. Sorry, I'm really sick. What do you need? I need the passwords. And the key to the file cabinet. The passwords are all in the shared document, and the file cabinet key is in my desk drawer. Which shared document? I'll text you the link when I get a chance, I really need to rest now." She hung up. I never got that link. I found the key in her desk, opened the file cabinet. It was mostly empty, just some random papers, old contracts from 6 months ago, nothing current. That's when the fear started. I called my son. "Alex, I need your help. Something's not right with Bella and the finances." To his credit, he didn't say "I told you so." "What do you need?" "Can you get me in touch with a forensic accountant? Someone who can dig into this fast?" "I'll make some calls." By that evening, I had a name, Patricia Chen. She specialized in startup fraud. I met with her the next morning. "I need you to audit my company's finances. I think my business partner might be stealing from me." "What makes you think that?" I explained everything, the locked systems, the missing files, the vendor complaints, the cash discrepancies. Patricia didn't look surprised. How much access did she have? Complete access. She managed all operations and finances. "And how much oversight did you provide?" I felt my face getting hot. "Not enough, apparently. I'll need access to your bank accounts, your accounting systems, and any financial records you have. My partner controls all of that. I can't get in." "Then we start with your bank. As a 50% owner, you have the right to full account access. We'll go there first thing tomorrow." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept trying to convince myself that there was a reasonable explanation, that Bella would come back tomorrow with all the documents I needed, that this was just a misunderstanding. But I knew better. The next morning, Patricia and I went to the bank. It took 3 hours, but they finally gave me access to all the account statements. Patricia went through them line by line. Her face got grimmer as she worked. Finally, she looked up at me. "Mr. Blackwood, how much money have you invested in this company?" $600,000 total, over 18 months. "And what do you estimate your current operating costs should be?" "Based on our size and activities, probably around $30,000 a month, so maybe $540,000 total spent." She turned her laptop toward me. "You've spent over $1 million. I stared at the numbers. "That's impossible." "I'm afraid it's not. Look at these transactions." She showed me payment after payment. $50,000 to a consulting firm, $30,000 for equipment, $45,000 for legal services, $28,000 for marketing. I never approved any of these. "Does Bella's signature appear on the accounts?" "Yes, we both have signing authority." "Then she didn't need your approval." The room was spinning. How much is actually missing? I'll need several days to do a complete analysis, but at a glance, at least 400,000, possibly more. I couldn't breathe. I need to confront her. I'd advise against that until we have the complete picture. If she knows you're investigating, she might destroy evidence or disappear. But I couldn't wait. I had to know. I called Bella. She didn't answer. I texted her. "We need to talk, now." No response. I went to her apartment. She wasn't there. I called every number I had for her. Nothing. For 3 days, Bella was completely unreachable. Patricia worked around the clock. She pulled every transaction, contacted vendors, verified payments. On the 4th day, she called me into her office. "I have the full picture now, and it's worse than we thought." She laid out a massive spreadsheet in front of me. "Your partner has systematically defrauded your company of $495,000 over the past 18 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. How? Multiple methods, inflated expenses, payments to fake vendors, unauthorized transfers to personal accounts. She created an entire network of shell companies that appear legitimate on paper but are actually owned by her or her family members. She showed me example after example. A software consulting firm that we'd supposedly paid $75,000. It was registered to Bella's brother. A marketing agency we'd paid $60,000, owned by Bella's cousin. Equipment purchases totaling $90,000. The vendors existed, but the prices were inflated by 50 to 70%. The difference was being kicked back to Bella. Salary payments for employees who didn't exist. Rent for office equipment we never received. On and on and on. She created perfect documentation for everything. Patricia explained. Invoices, contracts, receipts. It all looks legitimate. But when you dig deeper, it's all fake or inflated. How did I not see this? Because she's very good at what she does, and because you gave her complete operational control without any oversight. I felt sick. What can I do? You can file a criminal complaint. You can sue her civilly. But recovering the money will be difficult. She's likely moved it offshore or spent it. I trusted her. Patricia's expression was sympathetic. I know. That's what makes this kind of fraud so effective. I finally reached Bella 2 days later. She answered her phone like nothing had happened. Hey, Casper. Sorry I've been out of touch. I had a family emergency. We need to meet. Today. I'm actually out of the country right now. My mother is sick. I'm in Davao taking care of her. Bella, I've had a forensic accountant go through our books. Silence. Then, in a completely different tone, I see. $495,000, Bella. You stole almost $500,000 from our company. I didn't steal anything. Those were legitimate business expenses. Payments to companies owned by your family members? Salaries for fake employees? That's theft. That's your interpretation. The casualness in her voice was chilling. Why, Bella? We were partners. We were building something together. She laughed. You really believed that, didn't you? That we were equals. We had a 50-50 partnership agreement. On paper, but you always saw yourself as the Silicon Valley genius and me as the local help. You trusted me to handle operations because you thought they were beneath you. That's not true, isn't it? You never once reviewed an invoice, never verified a payment, never questioned anything I did. You just assumed I'd be grateful for the opportunity to work with the great Casper Blackwood. I trusted you because you were my partner. I was never your partner. I was your employee pretending to be your partner. There's a difference. So you stole from me? I took what I deserved. You came to my country with your Silicon Valley money and your big ideas, thinking you could build $1 billion company on the backs of cheap Filipino labor. I just made sure I got my fair share. Your fair share was 50% of the equity. Instead, you took all the money and destroyed the company. The company was never going to succeed anyway. Your product was mediocre. Your strategy was flawed. I just accelerated the inevitable and made sure I didn't walk away empty-handed. I was too stunned to respond. You know what the funny part is? She continued. You spent your whole career in Silicon Valley. You built multiple successful companies. You should have known better. But you were so desperate to prove you could still do it, that you weren't too old, that you didn't do basic due diligence. I'm reporting this to the police. Go ahead. I have documentation for every single transaction. Good luck proving it's fraud when all the paperwork is in order. Those companies you paid are owned by your family. Prove it. They're registered under different names. And even if you could prove it, so what? Family members can run legitimate businesses. She was right. I could see the legal nightmare ahead. You won't get away with this. I already have. The money's gone, Casper. Spent or moved somewhere, you'll never find it. You can waste more money on lawyers if you want, but you won't recover a cent. I trusted you. That was your mistake, not mine. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, trying to process what had just happened. I'd been in business for 45 years. I'd navigated complex deals, managed difficult partnerships, built and sold companies, and I'd been completely destroyed by a 34-year-old operations manager who saw me coming from a mile away. I did file a police report. The detective who took my statement was sympathetic but not optimistic. These cases are very difficult to prove, especially when the perpetrator has created proper documentation. It becomes a he said, she said situation. But I have a forensic accountant's report, which shows irregular transactions. But unless we can prove clear criminal intent, it's a civil matter, not a criminal one. She admitted it to me on the phone. Did you record the conversation? No. Then it's your word against hers. I hired lawyers, filed a civil suit, began the long, expensive process of trying to recover my money. 6 months later, I'd spent another $80,000 on legal fees. The case was going nowhere. Bella had left the Philippines. The company she'd created had been dissolved. The money trail went cold in multiple offshore accounts. My lawyers recommended I drop the suit. You're throwing good money after bad. Even if you win a judgment, you'll never collect. I sat in my hotel room in Manila, looking at the office space we'd rented. It was empty now. The team had scattered after the company imploded. The dream was dead. I'd lost $495,000, plus another $80,000 in legal fees, plus the 18 months I'd invested in building something that turned out to be a vehicle for theft. But worse than the money was the humiliation. I'd spent my entire career building a reputation as a savvy entrepreneur, someone who could spot opportunities and execute flawlessly. And I'd been played like a complete amateur. My son flew out to Manila to help me pack up and close everything down. I'm sorry, Dad. You tried to warn me. I wish I'd pushed harder. We worked in silence for a while, boxing up equipment and files. How did I miss it, Alex? How did I not see what she was doing? He stopped packing and looked at me. You wanted to believe. You wanted this to work so badly that you ignored the warning signs. I should have known better. Maybe. But you're human. You trusted someone who presented herself as trustworthy. That's not a character flaw. It cost me $500,000. It cost you money, but you're still here. You still have your experience, your knowledge, your network. This isn't the end. I wanted to believe him. But at 72, losing $500,000 felt like the end of something important. I returned to Silicon Valley 3 weeks later. The startup community is small. Word got around about what happened. Some people were sympathetic, others were less kind. I overheard someone at a tech event say, Blackwood got taken by his Filipino partner. Guess the old dog forgot some of his tricks. It stung more than I wanted to admit. I spent the next few months in a kind of fog. I'd wake up angry at Bella, then angry at myself, then just empty. I kept replaying moments from our partnership, trying to find the signs I'd missed. They were there. They'd always been there. The way she'd insisted on being the only one with access to certain vendor relationships. The time she'd redirected conversations when I asked too many questions about specific expenses. The slightly defensive tone when I'd suggested bringing in an outside accountant. All the red flags I'd ignored because I wanted to believe we were building something meaningful together. 8 months after everything fell apart, I got a message on LinkedIn. It was from someone I didn't know. A man named Carlos. Mr. Blackwood, I'm sorry to reach out this way, but I thought you should know. Bella Mercado did the same thing to me. I'm a retired engineer from Houston. Started a manufacturing business with her in Manila. She stole $320,000 from me using the exact same methods she used on you. I stared at the message. How many others are there? I wrote back. I've found 5 so far, all men over 60, all retired or semi-retired professionals. All came to the Philippines with capital and business ideas. All lost everything to Bella. She hadn't just stolen from me. This was her business model. Carlos had created a group of victims. We shared our stories. The pattern was identical. Bella would meet us through professional networks or startup events, present herself as a highly qualified operations professional, offer to be a local partner, gain complete control of finances and operations, then systematically drain the company over 12 to 18 months before disappearing. One of the victims, a retired accountant from Australia, had tracked her movements. She's in Singapore now, working for a venture capital firm, if you can believe it, using a slightly different name, but it's definitely her. We discussed going to the authorities as a group, but the lawyers we consulted all said the same thing. Different jurisdictions, insufficient evidence, civil matters, not criminal. Bella had been careful. She'd never crossed the line into prosecutable fraud, just stayed on the edge of legal ambiguity. And she'd chosen her victims well. Older men with capital but without local networks. People who were too proud or too embarrassed to make a big public fuss. I realized I had a choice. I could spend the rest of my life trying to get revenge or justice, or I could learn from this and move forward. I chose to move forward. I wrote about my experience, published an article in a tech industry magazine titled "What I Learned from Losing $500,000 to My Business Partner." I didn't name Bella, but I laid out exactly how the fraud had worked and what warning signs I'd missed. The article got shared widely. I got emails from dozens of people thanking me for the warning. Some had been approached by Bella or similar operators, others just appreciated the honesty. It didn't get my money back, but it helped me process what had happened. I also started consulting with startups on operational controls and financial oversight, teaching others not to make the mistakes I'd made. It was meaningful work, and it helped me regain some sense of professional dignity. My son and I grew closer through all of this. He never judged me, just supported me. "You took a risk, Dad. It didn't work out, but you tried." That's more than most people do at 70. Now, at 73, I can look at what happened with some perspective. I lost $495,000 to someone I trusted completely. But I learned something important. Trust isn't the same as blind faith. Partnership requires verification, not just delegation. I'd spent my career being the smart one in the room, the experienced entrepreneur who knew better than everyone else. That arrogance made me vulnerable. I didn't think I needed to verify what Bella was doing because I'd chosen her, and I trusted my own judgment more than I trusted any system of oversight. That was my fundamental error. The money is gone. I'll never get it back. My retirement will be less comfortable than I'd planned. I had to sell my house in Palo Alto and move to a smaller place. But I survived. And I learned. I still believe in partnership, in collaboration, in trusting people. But I also believe in verification, in oversight, in maintaining healthy skepticism even with people you like and respect. Bella was brilliant at what she did. She created a perfect system to steal money while maintaining plausible deniability. She chose victims who were unlikely to fight back. She timed her exit perfectly. She covered her tracks. In a twisted way, I almost respect the sophistication of it. Almost. But what she didn't count on was that I'd be willing to talk about it publicly, to share the story and help others avoid the same fate. That's not revenge. It's just information. I saw her LinkedIn profile recently. She's working at a startup accelerator in Singapore now, probably looking for her next mark. Part of me wanted to reach out to her new employer, warn them. But my lawyers advised against it. Potential defamation liability. So I do nothing. Just hope that whoever she's working with now is smarter about oversight than I was. The hardest part of all this wasn't the money. It was accepting that I'd been completely wrong about someone. I'd thought Bella was genuine, that she cared about what we were building, that she saw me as a true partner. Instead, I was just a target, a retiree with capital and poor judgment about operational controls. She never saw me as a partner, just as a resource to be extracted. That's what hurts the most, not the theft, the contempt. The casual way she dismissed me in that final phone call, the assumption that I'd been naive and arrogant, the complete lack of guilt or remorse. She was right about some of it. I was arrogant. I did assume my Silicon Valley experience meant I couldn't be fooled. But she was wrong about one thing. I'm not destroyed by this. I'm educated by it. And that education, expensive as it was, will make sure I never make the same mistake again.